You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Archaeology Show. TAS goes behind the headlines to bring you the real stories about archaeology and the history around us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi everyone, Chris Webster here, founder of the Archaeology Podcast Network. And as the APN takes a break this holiday season, we're taking this opportunity to give you episodes of other shows on the APN that you might not be aware of. And today we're giving you an episode from the Ethnocynology Podcast hosted by David Ian Howe. And on this episode, he has Dr. Carlton Shield Chief Gover, who's also a host of another show on the APN, the Plains Archaeology Podcast. And they talk about direwolf science and a recent article. On to the show.
Welcome to episode 15 of Ethnocynology with David Ian Howe. I'm your host, David Ian Howe, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Carlton, well, I guess co-host, guest, whatever you want to call it. It's the reflex.
I think. Yeah, I know.
Former host of A Life in Ruins, former creator of A Life in Ruins, Dr. Carlton Shield Chief Gover. And today, for those listening who don't know who he is, we'll introduce him, but we're going to talk about more of the blowback from the Direwolf debacle with Colossal Biosciences, and also just talk about some general science and, archaeology news and stuff that has been recently, in the zeitgeist. So I'm just going to catch up. So anyway, Dr. Carlton Shield Chief Gover, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, David. I figured the first time I'd ever be on this podcast was going to be about NAGPRA or something that I do, but I had a lot of questions regarding the...
We can dive into NAGPRA.
No, we're not doing that today. Not today. The recent Direwolf debacle, and we've been chatting back and forth, and we figured this would be a good episode content for the Ethnocynology Podcast. So for those that don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Carlton Shield Chief Gover. I co-hosted A Life in Ruins with David and our other buddy Connor, and I am currently the curator of archaeology and an assistant professor of anthropology at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas. And I'm also a citizen of the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma. But yeah.
And you sit on the board for that tribe as well, right? Right Nation?
Not anymore. I got off the museum board actually of January of this year. So I did 2 3-year terms, or 1 3-year, 1 4-year. So I did 7 years on as a board of directors for the Tribal Museum back in Pawnee. But I needed to focus on tenure. And so I reduced that need. And it also allowed me as a curator to partner with the museum and got rid of a conflict of interest so I could actually write grants and do exhibits in collaboration with the museum. So I'm still working with the museum, just in a different capacity. So yeah. Yeah.
And for those that are just listening, people that think, archaeologists have this huge cabal where Flint Dibble, runs a bunch of seances and has us do specific things and things like that. That really isn't the thing. What really it is me and Carlton text each other in a group chat. You want to play Civ? Or we'll send a very dark meme that he beat me to that I also sent him on Instagram. But mainly, speaking of wearing many hats, Carlton has a Master Chief helmet sitting behind him on his bookshelf right now. So if you want to say Ivory Tower, or archaeologists are all Ivory Tower, elitists that only live in the coast and are millionaires, I can tell you right now, looking at Carlton, it's not that has anything to do with his having $1 million or not, but he's just a down-to-earth guy.
That is an entire bookshelf dedicated to all the Halo novels except the most recent. And then the bookshelf next to it is all the Horus Heresy from 40K and Dungeons and Dragons modules. So all my academic books are at my office.
Right.
My home is dedicated to not archaeology. I like to separate those as much as possible, including the media that I'm able to consume.
Yeah. And speaking of media that we're consuming, you had some questions regarding the Direwolf thing. I'm sure many people did. I was going to pull up some comments, from my YouTube. I can do that here in a second too, about, regarding the Direwolf stuff. But yeah, where did you want to go with this?
Yeah. So, there was a couple things, right? So I listened to your episode recently. I was at the airport on my way back from Wyoming after giving a talk at the University of Wyoming, our alma mater. And I listened to your episode then. And then we've just been chatting in our group chat, trying to piece things together, because I remember being confused as to what was going on. And you explained that succinctly, right? Allegedly, the New York Post broke a press embargo, then the rest of the press broke the Atlantic. Sorry, my bad.
Very different.
Also broke their embargo. So then it rushed this group to talk about their findings. when the peer-reviewed paper hadn't even been released, which was also kind of odd that they already had press lined up before the paper went into peer review. Because I've done a couple of press sessions prior to a paper, like the science paper on horses that I was a co-author on that won the science award for most outstanding science article.
Yeah. It's a great paper.
We did that. I have the award. I actually got it framed finally. The Emily. It's sitting next to my Nintendo Wii, my Newcomb Cleveland prize. I got to bring it to my office. I keep forgetting. But we had done that after it was through peer review and was in press awaiting to be published in Science. We didn't talk to the press before it even been finished peer review. So that was what was running through my mind. And that's not necessarily something you can answer, but just for your audience, that is strange in it of itself that this paper hadn't even gone through the peer review process yet. That's just wild. And for a scientific article, the peer review process is what enhances and clarifies and acknowledges that the data being represented in this paper, and more importantly, the interpretations and results of this paper, are accurate to the findings. And so now that this has all been released via the press, and that they had done all these interviews beforehand, before those interpretations and stuff of theirs had been verified, is really bizarre, to put it politely.
Yeah, I would say so. And at the end of my, actually, I don't know if did you listen to the APN version or the YouTube version?
APN version, because it was on the plane. The
YouTube version, I added a few more little things here and there with a vlog style, which someone complained about. They were like, "Hey, why don't you stop interrupting the podcast to show your face?" I was like, "Well, I'm adding context, so you don't yell at me." Anyway, side note that Dr. Beth Shapiro had, released after all this blowback, this thing where she was clearly reading a written and prepared statement by the company that was clearly looked at by lawyers to phrase it in specific ways to say, here's what the confusion is, where she goes into species, where she talked about the Atlantic, leaking the thing. Yeah, it just seemed kind of odd. And again, this is nothing against Beth or Dr. Shapiro at all. It's just very strange to have released this. And it's the company, she's the lead author. And then Ben Lamb, who runs the company, is the lead author. And then the fourth author is none other than George R.R. Martin, who clearly has a financial stake in these being direwolves. And that's nothing against George R. R. Martin. Would I prefer he write The Winds of Winter and not write, Colossal Biosciences direwolf paper? Sure. Is it cool that he's on the paper? Yeah, it's awesome. But it's a little just odd, and it's just very clear that there's a financial and ad push behind this, or not ad push, you know what I'm saying? Like a media push behind this.
It reminds me of the first Jurassic World before things go haywire, and they're making jokes about companies sponsoring these chimeras of dinosaurs, right? And they're like, what about Tostitodon? And so when all this was kind of coming out, is this is very Gattaca-esque, in reference to the movie Gattaca about gene splicing and designer babies, but designer species was alarming. Yeah. And for your audience, I am not a bioanthropologist. I'm not a zooarchaeologist. I am a Great Plains archaeologist that focus in the Central Plains, specifically on radiocarbon data and data hygiene. And so that is where I'm coming at this, is from a data perspective, and how do we talk about good data?
Could you define what data hygiene is? I haven't heard it phrased that way.
Yeah, so data hygiene in the context of radiocarbon data, how do we best screen radiocarbon data that most accurately represents the human behavior in which we're actually trying to date?
Okay.
And so a lot of that goes into looking at how radiocarbon data has not only been sampled in the past 70 years, but also the samples that were used themselves and the quality of those, and trying to look at archaeological chronologies and site occupation histories through time. And so, as archaeologists, if you don't have control of time, you don't have control of any accurate or precise interpretations on human behavior and understanding the human condition or human history. So
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I'm not a geneticist or a bioanthropologist by any means. My training was in bioanth, I guess, at UT in my undergrad. And then I guess I'm technically as an archaeologist, like I focus, but there's like no license you get to be one. I guess, I don't know what the definition is, but yes, we're just, I guess for the audience listening, you and I both had we had different teachers, I think, for bioarch at Wyoming, but we had the same school. Was it like the same department?
I guess so. Yeah. I had Dr. Melissa Murphy, but they're pretty similar. Okay. And even my undergrad was mostly a forensic anthropology program. Yeah. I was like heavily towards bio as well. So like I cried my way through bioanthropology in my physical anth classes in undergrad because they just made my head hurt.
Right. And it makes your head hurt in a way that like you're getting... How I explain this? We had to read like several books a week for our bioanth class, and then The Origin of Species, Jim Ahern made as like an optional reading for 1 week, and I was like, I guess I'll just read The Origin of Species on Tuesday night. But
that was mandatory. I remember talking to you about that too, because I was like, yeah, we have to read this, and it wasn't meant to be funny, but you said, and I made a picture of it too, like a little. It was like you were talking about it. I was like, yeah, we can't wait to read about finches, and you're like, he goes on and on about pigeons. You know, you think you're out of pigeons and then you're not. And it's just, that book was it was a lot about pigeons.
The whole book is just an autistic man writing about pigeons until the final page about evolution.
And then it's natural selection with finches to express that, but it's mostly about pigeons.
Yeah. I shouldn't say autistic man, but he's dead. He had a niche interest. He is dead. Very much so. But it was where I was going with that. Yes, we had to read Origin of Species. You have to read that. You have to read Brace. You have to read Solons and Service. You have to read like all of these different people, and especially like in biological science, and then the history of scientific thought. And then you have to get into the history of racial thought and the history of biological thought. I guess I should say not racial thought, and all of that. And then that gets into genetics, and then speciation, and then how do we classify different human species, and then how do we classify modern human like species and races and things like that. And it gets further into, and then you have a roundtable discussion with other people in class that are interested in this, or, at least had to read it and discuss like, how do we define species? How do we do this? So even if you're not a bioarchaeologist or a bioanthropologist or a geneticist, I guess where I'm going is we all have a basic understanding of why this whole media thing with the direwolf is a little odd.
Yeah. And to elaborate on that, it's not just like we read this stuff, but a major arm of bioanthropology and archaeology is paleoanthropology.
Yes.
And so looking at, and like that's a fundamental tenet of our discipline, is understanding human evolution and human origins. And those are debates that are intrinsically centered around speciation and defining a species. Right. And so I think that's where a lot of the literature that David's referring to is really coming from. And both of our bioanth professors who taught biological anthropology theory, an entire semester long class dedicated to that one subfield, were both paleoanthropologists. Mm-hmm. So Jim Ahern focusing on Neanderthals in Croatia, and Dr. Melissa Murphy focusing on, I think, also Neanderthals. No, she's not paleoanth. She does something different, but
she does Andean archaeology, doesn't she?
Yeah, I think but I remember she had a focus in paleoanth at some point.
Grad school.
Yeah, in grad school, I think looking at like nasal cavity dimensions or something like that in Neanderthals. Yeah. Anyways, this isn't just like, oh, we read a book and talked about it in class. It is, speciation is a fundamental cornerstone or foundational block really of our discipline. And so when papers that do come up that are to the periphery of anthropology, like these papers here about the direwolf thing, like we have the knowledge and background to engage with the major themes. And yes, we rely on the results, and like we're not necessarily geneticists, but like when Dr. Shapiro goes online to defend this and go, well, no one can really decide what a species is, so we're just going to go ahead and say this is a species. Like that is a communist march of red flags down Tiananmen Square that get all of us like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not an acceptable form of interpretation, because that very much then dives into a pseudo-scientific corral of defense of their crazy interpretations. Not to say that they're crazy. It was just very odd to see these scientists capitalize on an ongoing discussion regarding the process of speciation and to kind of blow it aside. And he was like, well, no one can decide, so ergo it's a direwolf. And it's like, but there's metrics that we all decide on. Like there's a difference in paleoanth where we're all arguing over cranial capacity and like the size of eyebrows versus, oh, well, we spliced 3 or 4 genes. It is 99.99% gray wolf, and we have these 0.001 percent of genes that we've isolated to make it more fluffy. Yeah. It's like, that's not a dire wolf at all.
For sure. I don't know if I would go so much to say it's a Tiananmen Square situation, but I would say that, like, I think I see where you're going with that. But I gotta unpack that quick. However,
it was a red flag joke. That was a red flag joke. Communist Party, Tiananmen Square. Yeah, it was red like flag. Lots of red flags. Okay. That's
just with some of the ways some people in academia think. It's just like I was like, I don't know if it, but anyway, yes, it was a red flag to me in that sense, not in the Tiananmen sense that. It's just there's clearly a monetary push behind this, and using the, scientists can't really agree on what species is to then justify why this company can market and it should be like, when I say direwolf, it should direwolf like TM or direwolf like with the little C copyright thing on the end of the word. Like it's a colossal brand direwolf. It's not a direwolf. And kind of like you said with cranial capacity and like, we need to get a commercial break here in a second, but cranial capacity with human evolution and with humanoids and anthropoids and whatnot, or hominins, I should say. Like, when this direwolf is at full maturity, let me, analyze its skull shape in comparison with other direwolf skulls and other gray wolf skulls. And I'm guaranteeing you this is going to come up and look more like a gray wolf, though it's very minute. And I always make the joke that like paleoanthropologists will pull out the calipers and be like, well, actually it's a Homo habilis but it's like, yeah, it's a Homo habilis in Tanzania, not Kenya. So they're going to look a little different.
Oh, 100%. Paleoanthropology is mostly just sorcery and trying to identify species. It's like yelling at each other over the 6 finger bones that represent entire species. And they're trying to make some like very hardcore rules about it. No, I'm right there with you. I'm very much a lumper in that regard. Like, I think there's less species than what some might say exist.
I wanted to talk about lumpers and splitters in the last video, but I didn't get a chance. So after the commercial break, let's hit that real quick. So with that, we'll be right back. We're back. Carlton and I, before the break, we're talking about something called lumpers and splitters. And I got into speciation, and I got into allopatric, and I got into sympatric, and I got into hybrid speciation, and there's a fourth one. Not synchronic. That's to do with dating. I don't remember.
Is it like when horses and donkeys have a mule together?
That is that. I think that falls into hybridization, where the offspring have reduced fitness. I did 4 different types, but again, this isn't really helping my point of pointing them out that I don't even remember them. But it does fall into we don't understand species and it's hard to define it. But allopatric, meaning that's like the major one where it's geographically isolated. So the Congo River splitting chimps and bonobos. That's the one I always remember because that makes the most genetic sense. Llamas and camels being of the same lineage, but then one getting stuck in South America, the other getting stuck in, Mongolia. They're going to look a little different and then speciate hard. But a camel is much different than a llama than a chimp is to a bonobo. So that's further confusing. But lumpers and splitters, can you define lumpers and splitters? Because I do often mess this up when I lump them together, so to speak.
Yeah, of course, David. I'd be happy to talk about that.
As he pulls up his
lumpers and splitters. So, like, these are colloquial terms or just like average terms that we like run of the day terms that we just describe how some anthropologists look at speciation. I've only really seen it in reference to paleoanth, but I imagine it extends beyond that. But it is specifically depending on what department or even what museum you go to and the curators who curated a department on human evolution, you might see a lot of different species, and then you might see a more simplified human tree that essentially lumps a couple of what another paleoanthropologist would say are different species. They would be lumped as one. And so like I take this to the extreme. And if you ever listen to the Ruins podcast where we talked about like Neanderthals, like I am very much even in the camp that Neanderthals are a regional variant of Homo.
I remember we agreed.
A regional variant of Homo sapiens, and therefore I would name them Homo sapiens neanderthalensis to show it's a subspecies within a broader species, based on the fact that we know humans and Neanderthals interbred and had viable offspring. Like that is the understanding of species that I gravitate towards.
Yeah.
If they can get together, have a good time, have a kid, and that kid can end up having kids, that's a species belonging to the same species. Unlike horses and donkeys, which can have offspring in the form of a mule, but mules are infertile. Mm-hmm. And we can see genetically, you can look at modern day people today from European populations have anywhere between like 1% to 7% Neanderthal DNA. And so that's why I do that. And that would be a lumper mentality. Whereas even looking in Paleoanth, differences between Australopithecus afarensis and Africanus. Some would say, like a lumper would say, those are the same species. It's probably the afarensis is an Africanus, and some would split them. Mm-hmm. Heidelbergensis, which is a precursor to Neanderthal, it could just be
Homo sapien,
it could just be like a thick Homo erectus, right? Sorry. A more robust form. And so I would say it's a Homo erectus. Other would say, no, it's a Heidelbergensis. So like, that's what a lumper and splitter is. Like, how fine grain do you want to get? And I imagine there is a metric for the splitters.
Sure.
As to what's that threshold in differences, mind you, based off of like skeletal minutia that would substantiate that. And also you have to remember, like anthropologists, like we do, not to say we get money, but to get hype over your research, to look good in front of your colleagues. Discovering a new species does look good.
And to get Nat Geo to fund a documentary and more digs. And
precisely. So there is a little bit of that. Not to say that there's an underground cabal of archaeologists working together or anything like that. So that was a long-winded answer. Lumpers, they generally lump a bunch of different things together as one species. Splitters are far more rigorous as to
they're busting out the calipers, being like, actually it's a different
it's way more fine grained. They hyper focus on differences rather than, I think, similarities.
A good friend of mine who I was talking to about this, friend of the pod, was on Ruins a few times. His name Vincenzo Batista. Was maybe it wasn't him I was talking to about this, but he does bring up the difference. Like he brought up with this argument, the sea wolves that you see in Seattle or Vancouver Island. People always like talk about the lone sea wolf that's left. And it's like, it's another naming issue. It's a sea wolf. It's just a gray wolf that lives more aquatically and like eats more than it like swims more. And we call it the sea wolf. And it's like a regionally specified version of a gray wolf, but that's just all it is. So in 10,000 years, are we going to give that its own species name, or are we going to give that something else? And where I was going with this too, I don't think this was Vinny, but someone else had said this. Like, say you're an archaeologist 10,000 years from now, and you dig up Danny DeVito's skeleton, and then on the other side of the world, you dig up Shaquille O'Neal's skeleton. Splitter would say these are two different species. This is an example. Whereas a lumper would just say, well, no, they're all Homo sapiens because they look exactly alike and they have the same genetics. Yeah. And a lot of this was before genetics could figure this stuff out.
Right.
Yeah, but with incomplete genome, obviously you can do the genetics of Shaquille O'Neal and Danny DeVito's bodies right now, but when it's 3 million year old hominids, there's not much to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
And then moving it to like the concept of this paper, right? We have a really good understanding of the gray wolf genome through time.
Very much so.
And like my understanding is Angela Perry came out with that article in 2021 about direwolves. Like that genome has been sequenced. So, Neanderthals have been sequenced. Most of our genus Homo ancestors have not been sequenced. Once again, like 7 finger bones for a species, we have we have very partial remains of a couple individuals, like less than 10 in most cases.
The Neanderthals or Denisovans?
like habilis and like stuff like that, like way back, way back, right? To make it a little bit harder for like looking at the Australopithecine ancestors of ours, which make it difficult. So that wouldn't apply to the results of this recent paper that's still not even officially out. The draft is out, basically. The proof has been released.
The version of the thing that they're going to get peer reviewed is out for the public to read. It has not been peer reviewed, I guess is how we should phrase this.
Yeah, this is fucking wild. Like, this is inappropriate, right? Like, this is so bizarre.
If not immoral, it's a little unethical, I would say.
Oh, it's 100% unethical. And the fact, the Atlantic busting this is also highly unusual. Like a press embargo is that is a sacred blood pact. And like, if an author were to have broken this embargo, they would have been guillotined. Right? Like this is
Tiananmen Square rhetoric, but I get you.
I've been watching a lot of weird shit recently.
Archaeologist Carlton Shield Chief Gover calls for guillotine. No, I was kidding.
This is, and I respect some, like, I don't know most of these names, but like, I know A.R. Perry's name and I know George R. Martin's name. I think his books are up there too.
I sent a screenshot of the thing highlighting George R. Martin's name to Angela, and I was like, this is cool. She just sent back LOL or something. That's pretty sweet.
It's weird. Like, that's...
Yeah.
I have questions about this. Why hasn't anyone's head rolled at the Atlantic? I don't like it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. To me, kind of seems like I don't know if I said this in the last episode or after, but like the company wanted to roll out, they have a Direwolf, and then all these press people got wind of it, and then they like couldn't, the dam broke and they had to let it all out before the paper came out. And even if their plan was to wait for the paper to come out and then wait for the press release to be whatever date before the paper went up for, pre-peer review, that's still a little odd, because I think the plan was most people that, listen to Rogan or wherever, like, look at the science news from CNN or something, are going to see, oh my God, direwolves are back. Cause like my uncle sent it to me, who's, a sweet man who just sends me articles on dogs all the time. And he's like, did you see this? I'm like, yeah, but like, it's not a direwolf. And then I think their plan was like, 3 weeks from now, when it does get heavy criticism from the peer review, before it even gets officially peer reviewed and then published, most, laymen are not going to know otherwise. And it's already been on NBC and CNN and Fox News. And
yeah, I hate it.
It's just so like, that's what I find a little unethical. Now, I don't know. I think I might separate the researchers that are on the paper from what the company's doing, I should say. Because I guess Dr. Shapiro was just hired as a geneticist to work for she's just B.D. Wong from Jurassic Park. He's just there making dinosaurs. He's not, he wasn't there for a political reason. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't know Dr. Shapiro. I'd like to get her on and talk about it. But I don't know if she can.
I would like to know what Dr. Angela Perry has to say about this. Like, they were on multiple direwolf genome papers. They're part of this last paper. Mm-hmm. And like, her insights in particular, I would be like very interested in like, hey, this seems like not in alignment with your previous work. How did you in this group come to these conclusions of calling this like, Colossal Direwolves TM copyright?
Yeah.
Like, I would like to know that, if they're even able to, because like even companies like this,
Gregor Larson's on it too, and he's been on a lot of the other dog genome papers too. I'm wondering if they were just on. I haven't talked to Angela in depth about this yet, because I'm sure she's bombarded. But like, I'm wondering if they're just on the paper because they were on the previous one too, and it's part of their research already. I don't know how much of this, but when you look at the current paper they put out, they even have a diagram showing you like direwolves are very much an in-between species between like foxes, which are very distant, jackals, and then wolves. Like jackals are kind of like an in-between evolutionarily between foxes. I shouldn't say in-between. Like they're just, if you were to look at the tree branches, there are jackals and direwolves are on a branch in between foxes and wolves.
Yeah, but and separated by meaning, that break off between that clade of animals from gray wolves, sorry, my bad. I'm looking at gray. There's a gray fox. I'm looking at the cladogram now, if I'm even saying that right. And like red wolf, Mexican, eastern gray wolf, like the break off between the direwolf and
it's distant.
It's 4.2 million years. Granted, I will state, like, I know,
which is less than the 6 million years the previous paper said. Yeah.
Right. But I can also see they have a very large sigma value for this. Like, it's anywhere between, like, the standard deviation on these plots is wild.
Yeah, that's something I would love to have you elaborate on.
That is like 4 million years. Like that 99% unimodal distribution for when that date could be is 4 million years wide. Yeah. And so like, yeah, they're putting it directly where it could be, but I'd be like very curious, like, hey, what's the let's see. They're not even using the right terms, it doesn't look like. I'd have to like read the paper more fully, but like
my read of it while you're doing that was just like they had said it was 6 million years old in the 2021 paper, and then this paper with Beth Shapiro saying in the Colossal statement, like, a new paper that we funded and researched and have done and just are about to put out before peer review, says that they are actually much more closely related to gray wolves than they are previously believed. And if 2 million years from 6 million years to 4 million years difference is closer, then it is closer by definition, but it's still not Homo erectus only lived like 100,000 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, like
it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Homo habilis like showed up at the end of the Pliocene, like 2.4 million years ago. Right. This is like our whole species has evolved from.
That's a good way to put it too.
In that time, like that's how much difference has occurred between direwolves and the rest of these other canids, the eastern gray wolf, the Mexican wolf. What do timber wolves fall under?
Timber wolves, in my opinion, are just a subspecies of wolf. They're like their own. Right. A lot of times it's just a regional thing. Like it's a Mexican wolf is just a gray wolf that lives in Mexico. It's a little more brown.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then a coyote, I would argue, is a wolf still. It just has its own name, which people are like, oh, it's a coyote. But like it's a Canis latrans. Yeah.
I'd fall with that. I mean, like people, like Euro-Americans first called them prairie wolves.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it wasn't until the term coyote comes from a Spanish bastardization of the Nahua word coyote or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Coyote. Some weird thing at the end, and then the Spanish couldn't pronounce that, so they said coyote, and then anywho. Yeah. Then like American frontiersmen called them coyotes because they didn't do the Spanish anywho. But and the reason why I brought that up is like I heard a rumor like timber wolves in eastern Canada will kill coyotes on sight, but gray wolves are pretty chill with coyotes, and it had something to do about one going back across the land bridge and then coming back and forgetting about coyotes. This was like years ago, and I think you were involved with this conversation. Total diatribe.
Completely possibly, I mean.
So direwolves, for the history, existed during the Pleistocene. Mm-hmm. When do they go extinct by?
I'll answer that after this commercial break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Direwolves, Carlton Shield Chief Gover, went extinct around right at the end of the Pleistocene with everything else, all the other large megafauna in the Americas.
Were they hunted to extinction too?
Now, I don't know if humans were hunting them. I don't know of any evidence of human scavenging direwolf bones. And again, it's hard to tell. Is that a direwolf tooth versus a wolf tooth on someone's, beaded necklace back then? But I'd imagine if their prey being, large bison and mammoths are gone, and horse being gone, they're going to die out. And gray wolves seem to have adapted a lot better to alpine conditions where it could still be cold. And in the Younger Dryas, we're a little more, elastic. Could go to warmer climates, could go, much like the Mexican wolf, could go to a warmer climate or a hotter climate or a colder climate and completely adapt. Direwolves seem to be regionally specified to the lowlands and the plains. I personally think direwolves might have been more hyena-like, but that's just me. I'm not a time traveling zoologist.
The end of the Pleistocene was the beginning of, like, the prairies started doing really well in the Holocene,
because we killed all the, I'm just kidding.
So we see the prairie maximum in, like, mid-Holocene, but I can imagine, and, like, most robust.
What's the prairie maximum?
The prairie after the Pleistocene began to grow because the conditions were perfect for it. So actually the extent of the prairie range was greater in the
the range grew. Okay.
Like in the Archaic period. And it's been kind of retreating even the past like 4,000 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So Archaic Great Plains was the best time to be a bison.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Archaic bison.
Of my podcast, the Great Plains Archaeology Podcast. Anyway.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't mention that at all. We could plug that too. Carlton is a host of another show on the APN called the Great Plains Archaeology Podcast.
It is just so lecture heavy. It's just me for 30 minutes on topics. It's what it is.
Still science communication. Yeah, direwolves were a little larger, a little more robust. They lived in the more lowland areas, and it seems like they would have been slower than wolves. In which case, that's completely describing a hyena. Like, there's no wolves in Africa. There's African wild dogs, which are smaller. They're more like coyotes in that sense, which I guess I just said are wolves. But I'm not looking at the chart right now, but Lycone pictus are African wild dogs. Where do they fall on that chart near direwolves?
Yeah, so they're considered wolf-like canids.
Okay.
And they're on that same, that umbrella bracket. Jackals and wolf-like canids diverge anywhere between, like, they're saying 4.08, but that I really can't stress enough that the standard deviations on many of these species overlap, that I would struggle to take this cladogram. Is that what am I saying? Is this a cladogram?
Yeah.
I would struggle to take this.
Speciation is cladogenesis, yeah. But
I would struggle to take this seriously. Like,
just even the way they're reporting it, or the way
they're visualizing it, it's way too clean. The standard, like the hump, these unimodal distributions of the dates, they all overlap. Meaning, like, we don't really know, if that makes sense. Like, if I was to look at this as a Bayesian radiocarbon plot using the same kind of distributions, and I was trying to make a determination as to which culture appeared first, I would get roasted if I tried to make any precision trees of the separation in cultures. Because if these dates overlap like this, that means, like, and some of these are even within, like, the 70th percentile. So there's a 70% chance that the break off between direwolf and jackal could be flipped.
Okay.
So that's when I see this plot. It is way too clean, but this is the kind of stuff I look at and I'm just like,
because my initial thought was, wow, this is really clean graphic.
But I'm glad they had the back plots behind it, because I'd be like,
it's more down below. It
is not great. And this is from a data scientist. So if you look at figure 3, everybody, what I am talking about on this paper, that's, not peer reviewed or published, it's in draft, is if you look at those little graphs behind the cladogram, that is a 1 sigma value each way, or up to 2 sigma values of where those speciation events are occurring. And the fact that they overlap pretty significantly is alarming that they're making these interpretations.
Interesting.
Now, we can see, if you look at the bottom of the wolf-like canids, red wolves and Mexican wolves and eastern gray wolves, that is, like, those distributions are not touching. Like, they're over here. So, like, we know that's pretty solid. But when you look at the Dole, African wild dog, black-bearded jackal, and direwolf, the fact that they all look like overlapping mountain ranges.
Pulling it up now, put my glasses on. Figure which one?
Figure 3.
You guys remember from episode whatever where I talked about how to read an academic paper?
Yes,
that's what we're talking about.
These are the 95 percentiles. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah.
So,
okay, right. They did have the distributions behind it. Yep.
Yeah. That's fucking alarming, David. Like, that's, to me, that's, I would have a really hard time making any sort of definitive family tree when 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those things, those speciation events, are all overlapping.
This figure 3? Sorry.
Figure 3, yeah.
So, you know, I'm reading it. Figure 3. The direwolf lineage is distinct from jackals and other wolf-like canids. Time-calibrated nuclear phylogenetic relationships of extinct direwolves to extant canids using the MC tree from 25 kb. That's going into the weeds, but can you translate that to English for us?
I don't know what the hell any of that shit means. If you go the paragraph above, our estimated mitochondrial nuclear phylogenies were similar to those published previously, figure 3, S5-9, tables S8 through 10. So these are mitochondrial family trees, it looks like.
Okay.
There's a lot of jargon, but if you scroll down to just above, it talks about 95%. So, like, look at your graphs. And Dr. Eric Robinson, who was a postdoc at the University of Wyoming when we were there, I took an archaeometry course with him.
That was in the same class.
Were you in that class?
Yeah, I clearly didn't pay attention, but
that was just one class that class clicked for me. That was the class that opened up my brain. Yeah. I got pretty decent at understanding.
Good. I remember that.
This stuff. Yeah, that class changed my whole career. So yeah, this is a whole thing now. Just to say, I'd be very careful believing the interpretations of the graph. I don't know how to read figure 4.
Like, even if you didn't know how to read it, I'm looking at the cladogram on figure C of figure 4, like subsection C. It's very much distant from gray wolves. Well, I guess it's closer than other things, but it's its own lineage that died off as it's showing. Yeah. So I guess the previous paper kind of suggested they were more related to the bone-crushing dogs that went extinct hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yeah. Weren't those supposed to be hyena-like?
I would argue yes. Hyena-like in behavior, not hyena-like in genes. But hyenas are very wolf-like in their behavior themselves, but they're felids, or in felidae.
If you haven't yet, David, I would highly recommend visiting, and for your audience too, the Ash Fall Paleontological Site in Nebraska.
Okay.
It is a fossil. They're not even fossils. It is a bone bed of American rhinoceri that died out after the last Yellowstone explosion. Okay. And they're covered in ash to the point where the bones aren't fossilized. They're still bone. Everything is fully articulated, and there are bone-crushing dog footprints in the ash that have been excavated. So you can see the whole scene, and you can see these dog prints, and you can see where these bone-crushing dogs were getting into the rhinoceri, and you can see where they put them away. Like, it is an incredible sight.
Yeah.
It is like a once-in-a-lifetime find. Like, everybody. The Ashfall site in Nebraska, it's incredible.
Right now.
They're not even fossilized. They're still bone. That's how immaculate the preservation is on those remains.
Yeah. That's pretty wild. Bone crushing dogs were like an extinct lineage of canids that weren't dogs. It's just like canis means dog in Latin. So that's why it gets so confusing. But they kind of were like an in-between of bears and wolves, bears and dogs, like dog-like and bear-like creatures that just could chomp down real hard on things, which is what a hyena does. I don't believe there were hyenas in North America, maybe up in Canada a long time ago, but not.
There was a North American hyena. I might be mistaken.
I could be wrong. I also couldn't remember that there's a North American rhinoceros, but I just remembered that, which makes sense.
Have you seen Ice Age?
They would have evolved here. I have seen Ice Age. I don't really hold that to the highest paragon of truth, but they did have Clovis people shown in it, which was, good.
Apparently there is an American hyena.
Interesting. Okay.
Chasmoporthetes.
How long ago was that?
3 and 1.5 million years ago.
Okay, it's not terribly long ago.
It was after direwolves.
Same species of hyena that once roamed North America. Oh, interesting. The plot thickens. Because, hyenas are more they're not more kleptoparasitic. They're known for being kleptoparasitic, meaning that they steal the kill of other, lions and stuff. But I think every time I post that, because it's one I read, people will always comment and be like, actually, lions steal more kill than hyenas do. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that either. But either way, it's an interesting, factoid. That's how they act. But more like scavenging and kind of like coyotes when they'll kill a deer. They all gang up like compies in Jurassic World or Jurassic. What was the second one?
Jurassic Park,
Lost
World.
Yeah, they like gang up and take things out. Whereas, like, yeah, I mean, the same way a wolf does it, but wolves take out bigger prey. Hyenas are more like scavenger-ish and also like kleptoparasitic in that sense. And I'd imagine direwolves being bigger and slower might have more behaved that way, as opposed to like traditional gray wolves that hunt the way they do and the way you'd think wolves hunt, you know. But that's just me. And like hyenas like to chew on bones real big, crush them open and get the marrow out, and they eat kind of everything.
Yeah.
They also mark their scent and stuff like cats, which is interesting, but because they're more related to cats than dogs. But it's convergent evolution. There's no big wolf in Africa. Hyenas kind of fill that, and African wild dogs fill like the coyote kind of thing. But that's speaking out of my realm of, you know, expertise. But anyway, we should wrap this up. Any other thoughts you had on the Direwolf paper other than that?
I'm going to say this, and
They
I know
haven't come
people
after
are
me
going to
yet.
call me a liberal weenie. And I mentioned this to David, and it was in a text. So I just want to say it. I don't want to make a big deal about it. Just want to
Oh
put it out
yeah,
loud.
I was great. I meant to ask you this.
They keep talking about North American direwolf, bring it back, and then they make whatever this monstrosities are, and then they name them Romulus and Remus out of like Roman myth, and that kind of like irked me. I was like, this is a North American species, and you give it a European name. Like, once again, not a big deal. I'm not saying it's a huge deal. I'm not getting upset about it. I'm just saying, when it came out, I read that, I thought to myself, that's fucked, and then I moved on with my day. And then later, I guess they made a third one and did name it after an indigenous name. And I was like, okay, fine.
The red wolf, yeah.
Still could have been like, there's so many North American and Canadian indigenous nations that have wolf stories and wolf names. Like,
Lots of them.
come on, like low hanging fruit. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Romulus and Remus, what the fuck?
Yeah. And even, I think you sent me the video too, where they were going on about how they wanted to bring back a purely North American species, like not in a
Right. They said
way,
it, right? This wasn't me being like indigenous and a North American archaeologist, but well, this is fucked. It's like they themselves were talking about bringing back this North American species and like North America, ancestral. Like they kept calling it indigenous wolf. And I'm like, cool. And then you still named it after this Roman myth.
Yeah.
What the fuck, guys? And then that was it. That was my day. Like I moved on and I went back to work and just happened to share it in the group chat. Like, yeah, this is messed
You
up.
didn't tweet about it and demand they resign?
I didn't
Cool.
send an angry letter. I didn't ruin my day. I didn't dye my hair blue and start screaming in my office. I just made a note of it, you know, like you do in any interaction, like, huh, that's odd and not in alignment.
Man.
I haven't been fired for those kind of
Blue hair is
comments,
a phenotypical trait, by the way. It's not genetic.
No, it's not genetic that we know of.
Unless you're a Simpson, I guess. But anyway, yeah, that homie, that is a take for sure. But no, I agree with you there. Romulus and Remus, I can see because they're like the first hero twins of which the Maya have hero twins too. That's a common theme throughout the world. Were they connected? Did the Romans and the Mayans connect?
No, I get it. Like I understand the lore,
but I think finding the Mayan hero twins would have made a little more sense than Romulus
or just
and Remus.
any fucking wolf twin. There's a bunch that run around. It's just like, I get it. We're all predisposed to like Roman history. Like it's something we do as part of American culture is like, I get it.
Yeah.
I understand why we all recognize it. It's just like, damn, missed opportunity.
No, I feel you there, man. And then the third one's Khaleesi, which, you know, apparently they named that for George Martin. Why he didn't name it Greywind, Ghost, Nymeria, Lucky Lady,
Khaleesi's
Summer,
not even one of the
Shaggy Dog.
friggin' wolves.
Yeah, she's not even a Stark.
Yeah, like what? I don't know. There's just missed opportunities, like the embargo, naming the wolves goofy ass names. Like nothing has hit its mark yet when it comes to this research.
I would say the embargo weighs a little more heavier. They're breaking that, and the weird push behind it is a little, you know, more egregious than how they named it differently. But
I hope they get sued. I hope this group sues them for breaking the embargo.
Yeah,
like that's a contract. That's not a text message or a sticky note that says, "Hey, don't forget, can't talk about this until whatever date." It is.
Yeah, I've heard it specifically say like the Atlantic broke was throwing them under the bus.
It is contractual. That is in order to have access to this early. This is the agreed date in which we can all talk about it.
Right.
Like they were no joke with the horse paper. Like I was relayed to me very clearly by multiple people. Do not say a fucking word about this or put it in writing anywhere until this gets deployed, other than by papers coming out.
Well, on that note, we'll keep an eye out on this one. If you guys have more questions about the Direwolf stuff, put them here in the Spotify or the YouTube comments. I will answer them. I don't think anyone's commented on the Spotify ones yet. I did look to see if there were any comments. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns you'd like me to address in the next episode about the Direwolf stuff, put them up here in the bottom. If you have questions about indigenous archaeology or plains archaeology, please leave those in the comments here too for Carlton to see. And we can maybe talk about that on another episode or his podcast. And Carlton, speaking of, what is your podcast? And do you mind plugging it?
Yeah. So me and David co-hosted Life in Ruins. We still have 100-something episodes on there. They're all still pretty good. I listen to a couple every now and then. I'm currently running the Great Plains Archaeology podcast, which I need to record after this one. It is a 30-minute lecture style dive into Great Plains archaeology. And so for those that are interested in the largest geographic biome in the United States and the archaeology that goes on there, you can find episodes on that. And
I guess it is a pretty large biome, huh?
The largest. It goes from southern Canada to southwestern Texas.
Wow. I learn something new every day.
Pretty big. So
you had Milo Rossi come to your school the other day. That's the big news.
Yes, Milo Rossi of Mini Minuteman of YouTube fame was the guest speaker for the Undergraduate Anthropology Association here at the University of Kansas. So we gave a talk last week. They booked him in the largest lecture hall possible, and it was still standing room only.
That's wild.
Yeah, there's people from Kansas City, middle school, high school students. Like he brought in such a crowd. And I will give him credit for the talk was good. And we had a question and answer period for like 30 minutes, and there were still plenty of questions. They had a meet and greet with him afterwards, and that line went out the door, and Milo sat there for like an hour and a half and met with every single person that was in line.
Good for him, dude. That's a lot of work.
Took pictures, signed, and like he was late to his own reception. And so we had already started eating and hanging out, and that kid came in exhausted, because he made sure to meet with each and every individual person that came to see him. So huge props for that sort of character. That is.
You got to meet him though? It was good.
I got to meet him, got to talk with him, showed him the museum. We chatted a little bit.
Cool.
Talked about my research, and maybe I'll do something for him. I'm working with Stefan Milo now on a video that will probably come out in like a year or so. He's so backlogged. So
yeah,
even though I'm not
busy
in the game anymore, or I was never really in the game. I'm not as much active in SciComm, but I've transitioned now as a professor to supporting my friends in their SciComm. So I'm happy to be the support class now.
Good, man. Yeah. What is that in the D&D support class?
Yeah. I'm the guy that carries ammo and fires the machine gun and hell let loose or whatever else.
Yeah, there's that too. All right, man. Well, we got to wrap this up. So thank you for sharing that. Please rate and review the podcast. If you're on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, whatever it is, go ahead and rate and review it. If you haven't subscribed here on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe. And check out Carlton's podcast on the Archaeology Podcast Network, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, the works. And with that, I think there were dogs in The Last of Us last night. We're going to have to talk about that.
Ladder 14.
Ladder 14.
The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Culturo Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.